Right, at 6 minutes to 9 on this Tuesday morning, it is time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Every week here on OTB AM on the Gillette Performance Rankings, we'll give you the chance to win a Gillette starter pack. All you have to do is send us in your suggestions for the performance rankings. You can enter on our Instagram or tweet us at Off The Ball, and we'll bring you our winner a little later this morning. So for those people who are new to this, we've got a couple of poor performers on the weekend, a couple of good performers on the weekend, and a grand performer from the weekend. So where are we starting, Shane?
Well, I'm sorry, Owen. We have to start with a poor performer, and it's your own team, Arsenal. Your boys took one hell of a beating, Owen, let me tell you, against Liverpool at the weekend. A dismal performance, it has to be said. And a lack of application, I think, mentioned by Gary Neville on Monday Night Football last night from the likes of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Nicolas Pepe. He called them a joke, and it's hard to disagree. Now, Arsenal without, of course, Smith Rowe, no Saka either, but they look brutal. And Kieran Tierney, for his injury worry now to be playing on the minds of Arsenal fans is the last thing they want. The only thing you can say in Arsenal's favour, they have a relatively kind fixture schedule between now and the end of the Premier League season. They've of course got the Europa League to contend with as well in their hunt for a trophy, but in the remaining 8 games in the league, you know, even if they win a few of those, you still see them dropping some points. And really, Arsenal are a mid-table team right now, so the league table does not lie. Gary Neville said it looked like a group of players who weren't comfortable, like there was a disconnect between them and the manager. This is for the Liverpool game at the weekend. The manager looked like he'd had enough of them. He had that glazed eye look. It's instinct. We've been around football for long enough to know when a group of players are disinterested. There was, of course, the decision to drop Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang last month in the North London derby after he reported late for training. So we had to start really, Owen, with the negative story around Arsenal.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, how can you expect to get up for a game against Liverpool when you've got the mighty Slavia Prague coming to town on Thursday? That is where all attention lies at this point. The Aubameyang thing is quite funny at this point, that we all thought that this was a big deal, that Aubameyang getting dropped by Arsenal was a risk and a gamble by Mikel Arteta before such a big game. It wasn't a gamble at all. I think the more time passes, the more we realise that Mikel Arteta could afford to drop Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for that game for one reason and one reason only. It's because Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is not very good at football at the moment, and it wasn't a risk whatsoever. The gap between himself and Alexandre Lacazette has narrowed to the point where it's a shrug of the shoulders who's actually a better footballer at this point. You would like to think that Aubameyang will have a resurgence next season or at some point, but there have been many footballers that we've seen that just lose that spark, and they lose it permanently. Jamie Carragher was making the point last night that this could be another Mesut Ozil situation at Arsenal, which is quite a dramatic prospect, I guess, for the football club, that their captain will go in a similar manner to Mesut Ozil, that he might drift away from the starting team. I'm not sure if that's necessarily going to happen, but it's been an absolute disaster of a season for him, which epitomises, I guess, where Arsenal are, which is a mid-table side, as you see. I do think that they're trending, or they have trended at times in the right direction this season, but they've just had a few individual performers that you would expect a hell of a lot more from, and they've just been so disappointing. And also, I mean, their inability to pass out from the back without a complete catastrophe happening in pretty much every game at this point is something that is starting to bite them with more regularity at this point, which is the biggest concern I would have, that this style of play that has been implemented under Mikel Arteta, you would have thought would have teething problems at the start, which it did, but it seems that things are getting worse in certain departments, which is passing the ball out from the back at the moment. So very worrying times, even though, as you say, the likes of Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe, who were absent at the weekend, have been brilliant all season and represent hope. There are many other points where you're like, God, there is no guarantee that Arsenal do get out of their mid-table slumber next season. So you're right, poor performers. But they're not alone in the red this week, Shane.
No, big time. Poor performance for Mick McCarthy as well. What a shocker they had. The struggling Sheffield Wednesday, stunning mixed playoff hopefuls Cardiff City. A 5-0 win at Hillsborough. So that lifts Sheffield Wednesday off the foot of the table. But for Mick McCarthy, he must have been shell-shocked, because 3 of these goals came in the first 23 minutes. Julian Borner, Callum Patterson and Adam Reach on target for Wednesday. And a fairly miserable Easter, all in all, for Mick McCarthy. They had a 1-0 defeat at home to Nottingham Forest on Friday. So Cardiff now at 8th place, 8th place in the championship table, 8 points behind Reading, who currently fill the last of those playoff spots. And it was one of those games where Mick panicked. You know, you see a manager panic and he makes a triple substitution in the 72nd minute. his hand was forced, obviously, but it was too little too late. And really, Owen, I mean, an initial good run of form since he took over in January. They've now just 1 win in 6. And Mick speaking afterwards, he said it was a humbling experience this evening, that's for sure. The first goal set them up with a bit more confidence than they would have done. Having watched it back, we should have defended it better. Let's put it that way. That's disappointing. So a really, really poor performance. And football moves quickly, and it really catches up with you, because a couple of months ago at the start of his tenure, we're saying, what a performance by Mick McCarthy. He's doing incredible things at Cardiff. And now it's reality has bit him in the arse. So it's a tough one for Mick to take, I'm sure.
Yeah, and all the talk last week of the best Republic of Ireland managers that we've had in recent years. There's a certain manager doing so well at Cardiff City, and it seems that changes as well pretty quickly. Like, I mean, if he gets them into the playoffs, it's obviously a very successful season, you would have thought, from Cardiff City's standpoint, but it's just 8 points now at this point, which is just not something that you can see happening. It's like as soon as that longer term contract was handed out to Mick McCarthy, it seemed that not long after that, that's when things started to take a little bit of a spiral for him. But hopefully he does. Like, I want to see Mick McCarthy in the playoffs. I want to see the story. Like, I mean, this is the theme of this morning. Like the Jesse Lingard comeback, the Mick McCarthy comeback. These are the things that we want to see. And I don't think Reading are going to give way on that 8-point gap at this point. I think Bournemouth, if anybody, are going to slip into the playoffs if it's going to change at this point. And in an unusual state of play for the championship, it looks like the playoffs could actually be sorted earlier than we think. Usually anybody down to like 12th could be in with a shout of making the playoffs. But it looks like there's already a bit of a gap opening between 7th and 8th at this point, where Bournemouth, as I say, could be the only ones that get in. So, yeah, not a great weekend for Mick McCarthy. But we're moving on to the grand performance, and I guess this is kind of greatness mixed with mediocrity, Shane, but this is the highlight of the morning for you to talk about this.
Oh, any excuse to talk about snooker, Owen. You know I will do it. And yeah, let's talk about Stephen Hendry and Jimmy White, because the two of them played last night in a World Championship first round qualifier. So this takes place at the English Institute of Sport in Sheffield. You have to go through 3 rounds of the qualifying to get to the first round proper of the Crucible, which gets underway in a couple of weeks' time. 17 days of action at the Crucible. But just what a rivalry. Stephen Hendry and Jimmy White, to see them in action last night. I mentioned earlier, you know, Stephen's put on a bit of timber. Jimmy looks a bit different as well. They're not the young, fresh kids that they used to be. But what a rivalry they have. First met at the World Championships in 1990. Jimmy White won on that occasion. But Stephen Hendry would go on to beat Jimmy White in 4 World Finals. In 1992, Jimmy White essentially had his victory speech written. He was 14-8 up in frames in a race to 18 before he went on a night out, came back the next day. Hendry won 10 frames in a row to win 18-14. And that was just the start of it in terms of pain and, you know, the pain that was brought upon Jimmy White by Stephen Hendry, because in 1993 then, Hendry beat White 18-5 with a session to spare. So absolutely demolished him in a World Snooker final. And then in 1994, 17-all, deciding frame. Jimmy White has a black off the spot, and he kind of jerked his arm a little bit and missed. And of course, Stephen Hendry cleared up. He never allowed chances like that to go amiss. They were practice partners in the lead up to this tournament and these qualifiers in recent years. In recent months, they've been practice partners. And Jimmy White apparently has been getting the better of him in practice. But last night, Hendry was the one who got the better of White. 6 frames to 3 it finished. There was the commentators on Eurosport last night saying Hendry was almost like a Bond villain for a while. The difference, though, is that Bond usually ultimately prevails, and Jimmy White usually doesn't prevail when it comes to matches between himself and Stephen Hendry. So you just had this image of Stephen Hendry sitting in the corner like Blofeld stroking his white Persian cat. But of course, he was holding a cue instead of a cat. But a scary figure when you see him sitting there. Steely determination. But to see Stephen Hendry out of retirement is quite surprising. We've got a video clip here now. This is from myself speaking with Hendry back in May 2018. So you're talking 3 years ago. I did not think back then, and neither did Stephen, that a return like this would be on the cards. So he told me that retirement decision he made in 2012 was not one he had taken lightly. Have a listen.
No, not at all. There was various reasons, but yeah, no, I mean, every now and then I look back and I say, yeah, I do sometimes regret it, because you know, we're sitting in the Crucible now, and I'd love to be, you know, getting ready, going to be on the practice table now, you know, getting ready to come out and play in a semi-final World Championship. You're never going to stop missing that. But what I couldn't do is struggle to do was play the 5-6 hours a day practice that was required to be able to compete. So yeah, although I miss being out here with a cue in my hand, you know, it's never going to happen because I'm never going to be able to do what's required to get me there.
Yeah, he told us it's never going to happen. He lied because it did happen. He ended up getting back to the point where he could practice again. The quality, though, Owen, was fairly abysmal. One of the frames was won with the highest break of 7 by Stephen Hendry, which is pretty much a break that I could accomplish, which says enough. We've got a few tweets here from a couple of people that were watching that we'll start with Mark Williams, and I think these sum up the quality. Mark Williams says, I enjoyed watching the Jimmy and Hendry match. It brought back memories, but I cannot watch anymore. Mark Williams inevitably turning off the screen. He could not bear to watch the lack of quality. We've got one from Dennis Taylor as well, the 1985 world champion. I enjoyed watching two of the great legends of our game. A lot of mistakes, although frame 6 was vintage. Well played, Stephen. Unlucky, Jimmy. Someone replied, which one do you fancy a crack at in the seniors, DT? Dennis says, doesn't matter who, Jason. You know me. 10 minutes practice and I'm ready for anyone. I'll be going for a shot of the championship again. Almost dislocated my shoulder with that screw back in the UK seniors. So Dennis Taylor having a bit of crack with people on Twitter last night. Someone else, Archibald at Penguin7874 says, they look like two people dragged in off the street and asked to pretend to be snooker players, which I thought was particularly harsh, but not exactly inaccurate. And then Paul McBennett, they should fire on the jukebox, disco lights, and have an old boy firing out a loud fart every 8 minutes on the next table, and it's a Monday night club league game. I've been in those clubs, in snooker clubs and snooker halls in Dublin, and indeed in Monaghan, and that's exactly what it's like, to be fair. So that's the lack of quality that was on show last night. So quite disappointing. An 11:43 p.m. finish. Hendry's cue action has slowed down massively, Owen, and the backswing is quite slow. But there were a couple of frames and people getting flashbacks. Frame 7, Jimmy White makes a break of 58, and then he misses a red to the middle, and Hendry clears up. So a fairly disappointing one for Jimmy White. And what happens from here then? Hendry plays Zhu Si, the Chinese player, on Wednesday in round 2. Jimmy White likely loses his tour card, unfortunately, but Barry Hearn will likely give him a 2-year invitational card, and he'd be silly not to. Ken Doherty actually is in action this morning in the first round of the qualifiers. He takes on Lee Walker. But it's an interesting one, and you know, we've got other matches as well. They were pointing out in Eurosport last night that Gerard Green could play Jordan Brown, which is what you'd call a 7-pointer. Green, of course, worth 3 and Brown worth 4. So, just snooker jokes aside, can we just appreciate for 1 minute? Let's forget about the lack of quality here and just appreciate what these two have done for us. We've got a photo up on screen now of these lads in their old prime when they started playing against each other, and then one now. And you just see how long, it kind of just sums up how long these lads have been in action. So you have to have respect for the two of them. Everyone gets older, and we should just thank these two for the entertainment they've brought to us over the last number of decades. Jimmy White and Stephen Hendry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like the first lockdown, except the nostalgia is actually happening in front of our eyes in real time, and we realise actually things maybe weren't what they seemed, or actually, you know what, nostalgia is a little bit overrated anyway. Maybe that's what everybody's realised after last night as well, with two greats going toe to toe. We're into the green, Shane. Things get a little bit better here.
Yeah, let's start with Callum Robinson, I think, because what a weekend he had. 5 goals in the Premier League. He scored for West Brom, and all 5 against Chelsea. He just loves playing against Chelsea. And a 14-match unbeaten streak for Thomas Tuchel and Chelsea coming to a spectacular end. Thiago Silva sent off after around half an hour in that game, picked up 2 yellow cards. So around an hour without with 10 men. But what a performance from Callum Robinson. And he took the goals remarkably well as well, I think you'll agree, Owen. And, you know, we had the text in at the start from Isel Cody talking about the Monaghan links. And yes, he does have Monaghan links. It was his grandmother, Anne Deehan, moved to the English Midlands from Monaghan nearly 50 years ago. She settled into a marriage, started a family. It was actually quite a sad story because she was killed in a car accident. And when her daughter Claire, Callum's mother, was just 9 years old. So her husband then remarried, and the family kind of reshaped and had a new life over in the Midlands. But an extraordinary backstory, and I'm sure his mother would have been, and his grandmother would have been remarkably proud of him at the weekend, because he put in a serious performance. I guess Irish fans are looking on at these games with Callum Robinson scoring goals and thinking, if only we could get some of that performance at international level. But then again, you know, it might be just the delivery and the, I guess, you know, the balls in he's getting, the assists he's getting given to him. So he's a cracking player. Maybe we just need to always play teams wearing blue in order for Callum Robinson to perform at the highest level for Ireland. Yeah,
like that's absolutely it. That I think you've nailed it there. Just it's a shame that Portugal don't wear those colours. Like Sam Allardyce literally has his feet up at the end of the game. Is the striking image I have, like just absolutely chuffed to the gills, as if somebody's just delivered a fresh pint of wine to his table. Sam Allardyce beaming like a Cheshire cat. Unbelievable scenes that Callum Robinson maybe doesn't even get onto the pitch unless Darragh O'Shea gets injured, and then Branislav Ivanovic gets injured, and then Sam Allardyce actually decides, you know what, now is time to act. Now is the time for me to get an extra attacker onto the pitch. And was part of the transformation of the game. It does help that your totemic centre half in Thiago Silva isn't on the pitch anymore when you do enter the fray. But I love that performance, especially the two different types of finish they were. Like the first one, kind of late arrival into the box, which seems to be the only way that the Republic of Ireland can score at the moment or create chances at the moment. But then the second one, the little ball in behind. I mean, you can kind of play it both ways, really. Callum Robinson, no matter what sort of attacker he is for Ireland. And I think over the last couple of weeks, he's sort of nudged his way to the front of the queue now when it comes to Ireland's attackers. I think it's quite clear to everybody that he is more ready than Connolly is. Then I know Adamine has been injured, but more ready than he would be as well, and obviously more ready than Parrott, who's very, very young. And it kind of comes back to this lost generation that we've been speaking about so much over the last little while, that one of the few exceptions to that rule had been Callum Robinson. He's of an age that he's not really the same age as many other people in that Ireland squad. He's come through and is kind of hitting the prime of his life at the moment. It's just a shame, as you say, that he can't play Chelsea every week. Like, this was also like absolutely shattering from a Chelsea standpoint. And like, I don't know, does the international break just completely tear up all sort of momentum, where I was definitely I wasn't giving West Ham any chance of qualifying for the Champions League next season, not because of them or because of what I expect them to do, but because of how good Chelsea looked, and that there just wouldn't be enough places between themselves and Manchester United and Leicester. And when Liverpool have their end of season form, which will boil to maybe a good challenge as well. Whereas now, after what happened on Saturday and West Brom putting 5 past Chelsea, I'm like, anything could happen this season. Maybe Liverpool get distracted and maybe West Ham actually do waltz in and grab a Champions League spot.
Yeah, an extraordinary performance. And we got a little bit worried when we saw Didsy McGoldrick retiring from international level, but to see someone like Callum Robinson do what he's doing, and look, gone are the days where we have players playing regularly for Liverpool and Manchester United and Arsenal and Chelsea in the Premier League at the top tier, but to see someone like Callum Robinson play like he is at the top level and score those 2 goals. The first goal was just extraordinary. The late arrival, as you said, and the volley into the top corner, taken like a player who hadn't come off the bench for a start, and taken like a player who's played regularly and got loads of game time. He said afterwards that the international break gave him that bit of confidence, that getting those games under his belt really, really helped. If only he could have maybe hit the back of the net at international level. But look, those goals will come for Ireland. So we had to have Callum Robinson there as one of the good performances in our performance rankings this morning at OTB AM. Freewheeling Dylan, then, the man, or the horse rather, on the back page of a lot of the papers. We just got confused with the Bob Dylan song there and got carried away. But what a race! What an Irish Grand National yesterday. My brother works for a bookies, and he was saying that one of his colleagues' nephews, I think it was, is 4 years old, was given €5, or maybe it was €10 pocket money for Easter. The Easter bunny obviously came and gave him this money. He picked a horse, a random horse, and it was Freewheeling Dylan he pointed at. €5 each way, and €910 that turned into. So what a I mean, 150 to 1. It was an extraordinary story as well. Ricky Doyle, the jockey, really, really good interview afterwards as well, but never passed the longest priced winner ever of the Irish Grand National, first run in 1870. So that'll tell you how impressive an achievement that is. And just for the local trainer as well, Dermot McLaughlin, an emotional victory. 62 years after his father Liam rode Kerfero to win this exact race. So really, really a touching story for them. There is a great video that we want to bring you now as well. This is the local trainer Dermot McLaughlin's cousin Ollie watching the final moments of that race yesterday. Have a look.
Please, for once, will this 150 to 1 shot actually get over the line? Like, you mentioned did you say it was your nephew, your 4-year-old nephew, or your?
No, sorry, it was a colleague of my brother's.
So my apologies. I just had I've also heard another story of somebody winning about 450 quid on this horse yesterday, again by the same logic of not much logic at all. I think it's more to do with the fact, I know somebody called Dylan, or my name is Dylan, and I know it's quite a popular name for babies in Ireland over the last 10 years. I think a lot of people might have actually had a punt on Freewheeling Dylan yesterday and actually got a big return out of it. It was just absolutely incredible. Like the Grand National, I guess, is all about sometimes a flutter that you've got absolutely no logic behind. It is a time to actually back a horse on its name sometimes, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who were feeling like that spectator yesterday that we just saw, but you can't really beat that. That is it for the performance ranking. Shane, is it Freewheeling Dylan number 1?
Absolutely. Pleased for once in my effing life. The quote of the day.
And big congratulations to Paddy Fahy. You have won a Gillette starter pack this Tuesday morning actually, on OTB AM. So Paddy nailed his performance rankings picks, and he even colour-coded them. So here's what Paddy went with. He went for the brutal Aubameyang and a few more from the team. Can't disagree with you there. The bad Mourinho. Same coach, different players, to quote Jose himself. Fair going was Big Sam's West Brom. They were amazing. Bit harsh putting them in orange, but still fair going is probably the least you could say about them. The good was Jordan Spieth, who we haven't mentioned yet, Shane, but there will be Masters build up here on OTB AM throughout the week. A lot of Golf Weekly love for Jordan Spieth over the course of the weekend. Been a while since he's won, and even better, says Paddy, Jota, 30 minutes play gets man of the match. I sense a Liverpool fan there somewhere, but really Diogo Jota and his return to fitness has been a massive fill-up for Liverpool. We'll give you another chance to enter next Monday morning on OTB AM, but that is it for this week's Gillette Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.